Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunrise Didi. Today, I'm Chamberlain Oso.
And my favorite day of the week is finally here. Good morning, and thank God it's Friday. I'm Maokbe Ogunyusu.
With this energy, Maokbe, it feels like you can still go like another 3 or 4 days.
I
guess it's the energy from morning brief.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, Yola, was lovely scenery yesterday as well when the governor had some activity there. But this right here now is Mahmoud Badu Square in Yola, the Adamawa State capital. So you got, just look at that picturesque scenery right there. So,
well, 77 you more than the square, I can tell you. I'm looking for the square in all of this, but...
well, you can still see that.
The square certainly doesn't include the river I'm seeing in that shot, does it?
But I mean, it's one of those lovely areas where you could always find a way to take advantage of water around you. But you could also see the serenity in the city, and I'll connect this to how we need to leverage on this, make the most of it in terms of agriculture, in terms of tourism. There are just so much, but take it all in.
You know, Chimlane, much as I know that the shot will zoom closer to the square, and we'll be able to see that square in greater detail very soon. But what we can see is a general aerial shot of Yola, the state capital of Adamawa. And one of the beautiful things about state capitals outside of big cities like Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, is the fact that you can still see a lot of greenery, which tells you about the state of the air in that place. If you've ever been concerned about air quality, and you're wondering also about quality of life, maybe you begin to think about staying in a city outside of these big three. And it might surprise you what beauty it will do to your own quality of life. I think the square is coming up in the shots right now. We can see it closer and closer. Yes, you can see that square right there. That's it. But I'm busy admiring the aerial shots and the trees in it. I can see that Yola, I haven't been to Yola, but I think I can say now that at least I have an idea of what Yola, the state capital, looks like. And it's a place that if there's sufficient economic activity to sustain one, it's a place that people shouldn't mind staying. I wouldn't mind staying there.
You know, it's not a bad place, yeah.
Do you really know Yola until you get there? I don't know, because I mean, the view is different when you are down there, when you're on the road, going there. For me, I think what this tells me is just what I said. I mean, the fact that there are so many people who live in Yola now who are wondering, wait a minute, where is this in Yola?
Well, people of Yola, this is what your city looks like from the sky. It's beautiful.
Exactly. So that's just one thing that we need to take. And that's the beauty of our lives. I mean, you live in a particular place, you don't even know what it looks like from a completely different view or a different perspective. And it's the same with the issues we discuss on this program. And anytime and every time, the issues are coming from different angles, and you're wondering, aren't we talking about the same agriculture? And then you're bringing in this, you're bringing in that. The same view we're giving you this morning, one of the reasons, just to let you know that this is your world, this is your nation, and this is your city.
Well, several cities, they've got their imprimatur, the character of each city. I got to Yola for the first time several years ago, actually, about 10 years, I think. But, getting there, if you haven't been there before, you'll definitely have this mindset. So getting there, you'll also see economic activity. A lot of young lads got to FUTSI, Yola, that's Federal University of Technology, Yola. Also young, intelligent minds, and you see that all across the country. And you get to see that this country has a lot of people that we can leverage on to ensure that things work for us as a country, if we really wanted to. We're talking about cottage industries. You have the personnel all across the country that can make things happen. The economic hub, there are young people in this country that can drive this country, I tell you. But we just need to look inwards and stop playing politics with what?
You took that word right out of my mouth.
And so many other things. So
politics. Can we just play down on politics and look at the end of the day, whatever it is we are talking about is about the lives of people.
Yeah.
People. That's what it's all about. So drill it down, everything, drill it all down to people, and not just people, individuals, human beings, not just data.
They got vast cities, I tell you, though. Some capitals, mountains. Oh, boy, you need to go around this country and see what we've got.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take you through some of the dailies and see what they are talking about this morning.
The 3 presidential jets are mostly in the news this morning. Look at the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. Anger as French court orders seizure of 3 presidential jets. Story is on page 2. Of a dispute between Ogun State and Chinese firm. FG has no contractual obligation with Chinese firm presidency. Process attaching aircraft to contract fraudulent, according to Ogun's government. Seized presidential jets as sovereign assets. Immune from attachment, according to AGF. Says legal diplomatic steps on course to ensure discharge of inappropriate order. Secret purchase of presidential jets despite outcry insensitive. That's from Peter Obi. Find the details on the inside pages of the paper. Daily Independent has this one as well. FG clarifies seizure of Nigeria's 3 presidential jets in France. Assures on steps to discharge inappropriate orders against jets. China's firm plotting to strip Nigeria's offshore assets. That's from the presidency. Firm misled French court on presidential aircraft, according to Ogun government. Obi says seizure is international embarrassment, asks FG to come clean. The front page of the Daily Times newspaper has the same story. French court seizes Nigerian presidential jets over $74.5 million dispute. FG taking legal diplomatic steps to recover seized presidential aircraft. That's from the AGF. Ogun government moves to vacate seizure order. Aircraft seizure, an international embarrassment. That's from Peter Obi. Look at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. FG Ogun government battle to recover seized presidential jets. Chinese firm secures Paris court order. Order attempt by Chinese company to strip Nigeria of assets. That's from presidency. Ogun government folds fraudulent legal process. It's an international embarrassment. That's from Peter Obi. You find the details of that story on the inside pages of the paper this morning. The same story is on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. Alleged $74.5 million debt. Presidency Chinese firm in tug of war. Presidency Chinese firm in tug of ownership over presidential jets abroad. Ogun government flees seizure, says Zongshan's actions fraudulent. An embarrassing leadership failure. Obi blasts FG. That story is on page 3. Other stories on the front page this morning. Business Day. Retirees die of hunger 3 decades after serving Nigeria. This is not good. FG owes 250 billion naira pensions as of May 2024. Equally shocking is this one on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Petrol pump price nears 1,000 naira per litre in FCT and states. Supply off nationwide. CSO knocks NNPCL. National Oil Company silent. Find the details of that story on the front page. It continues on the inside pages of the paper. The Guardian newspaper reminds us of Olympics. Rinse and repeat. Nigeria awaits Los Angeles Olympics after Paris 9 billion naira poor outing. It's the big story on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. This is all the dailies we have for you today.
All right.
Well, quite a number of stories stick out immediately on the front page. How can we ignore this scandal that broke yesterday? The French authorities issuing a court order seizing Nigeria's presidential jets. Of course, I think that I'm kind of happy. I'm kind of happy that the presidential candidate of the Labour Party immediately picked up on that. And some of the issues he picked up on is the fact that that particular matter is very embarrassing, one. And then two, the fact that a brand new jet, which the federal government had been very quiet on, because there had been allegations that they were about to buy a brand new jet. In fact, when the House of Representatives came up with that issue, recommending the purchase of a brand new jet, some people said that the jet was already purchased. and that they were just looking for some people to give it some approval or give, find justification for why a new jet was needed. It does appear now that in spite of all of the silence, what they were trying to keep quiet is finally out in the open. As I said, a lot of things stick out. That's not the main focus. That's not my main focus this morning, but one cannot ignore that particular matter. We finally found out that, okay, the Ogun State government and the Chinese company or a Chinese company are the ones who have a problem, and the federal government of Nigeria has been dragged into the issue. While we wait for clarity and, a proper resolution of the matter, I think that Nigerians are owed explanation on what is happening and how that matter is going to be resolved. That is on the one hand. But the Daily Trust, the front page of the Daily Trust is the one that is really my concern this morning, and I'm sure the concern of many Nigerians, which is this petrol pump price nears 1,000 naira per litre in the FCT and states. Supply on, off, nationwide, CSO, NOx, NNPCL. Is it possible for them to be a little more, or not a little more, is it possible for the NNPCL to be transparent? Is it possible for us to get a briefing? Okay, so maybe if this is outside the remit of the NNPC, because some people will argue that, look, this is a policy matter. This is about the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. And we know that the president, excuse me, has decided to retain that title as the Minister of Petroleum. And who we see right beside, remember the last time we had Senator Heineken Lokobiri here, all he kept on saying was, I'm not the one in charge. I shall find out from the NNPCL. I will clarify. That was all we heard. So is it possible for us to have a joint meeting? Maybe perhaps led by the president himself, broken questions, taking questions on what the situation really is with petrol. Because if we have been told that if the promise of the removal of subsidies was that, oh, you're going to be swimming in enough petrol, queues will be a thing of the past, and yet here we are, how many months after petrol subsidies have been ostensibly taken away, people are still spending long hours at filling stations, dealing with station managers that have turned tin gods. Is it possible for us to really know what is going on? Why do we have these queues? Can there be transparency? I don't care about a bit. Can there be transparency with regards to this? I think the Nigerians have had it up to their noses, not knowing what is happening with petrol and having to queue for it every time that they have to, get supplies.
A lot needs to be clarified, yes. But, again, it will still be with the president. Because I don't know, I do not think, you could correct me if I'm wrong on this one, anyone watching too, because I don't think any leadership or any manager or anyone in NNPCL can unilaterally just say, look, this is going to be the price of petrol without the final stamp or approval of the president. I don't ever think that can never happen.
So I say the president owes us that.
Exactly. So that's why we hear when the president came in and announced that, subsidy was gone. You heard the NNPC response. Oh, we didn't know. We didn't see this coming. They were in the dark. And so you see, he is the Minister of Petroleum. So you have Minister of State for Petroleum and then Gas. They still report to him. So that's how sensitive that matter is. So he needs to come forward on this one. Look, we know that there are usually political considerations when it comes to this matter. Because if he looks and says, look, the other day, somebody told us that the Minister of Finance had said in another forum that, look, we're paying subsidy. This is being paid. And then the Minister of Budget and Planning did say here as well, NNPC has not remitted. Is it possible for them not to remit and government is not up in arms with them if they're not using it for a purpose of which government approves of?
It's interesting. I also remember the response of the Minister of State, Senator Heineken. He kept on saying, yes, subsidy has been taken away, but that's not to say that the federal government cannot intervene.
So you see, that's through the back door.
What will we call the intervention of the federal government? Will it still be right to call it subsidy? You can call it whatever you want.
So you see that? What is that? That's a subsidy.
I think, at the end of the day, at the core of this is what Markwe raised earlier, which is that of communication. Come clean. And I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing that Mr. Peter Obi was talking about.
Yeah.
He said, look, the federal government needs to come clean. So when we don't have sufficient information, guess what? We will fill in the blanks. We will, the people will fill in the blanks.
Especially when the blanks are so obvious.
Especially when the blanks are so obvious, and many in a sentence. And the verbs are not there. We will pull in the verbs. Okay, the people will put in the verbs. And guess what? The consequences would remain agitations.
Because look,
different levels of...
No smoke without fire, they say.
Exactly.
The petrol landing cost, for instance, who says it's not up to 1,200?
Already.
If they are, and how are they sustaining this? How long can they sustain this for? Where is the resources coming to sustain this? How much barrels are we producing? All of those vandalism going on.
We do understand,
our production capacity.
We do understand that the federal government and the various levels of government owe it a duty to themselves and to Nigerians to protect us with certain information, because sometimes you give out some information at the as Chamberlain would say, will bite you in the butt. However, there is certain information that can put people's minds at rest. Buying fuel for 1,000 naira per litre, well, maybe we'll get there eventually, but can we have some time? Can we have some respite? Okay, if I have the money and I can afford to buy the fuel at 1,000 naira per litre, of course, why not? But in the situation where I'm struggling to get the money and the prices continue to increase.
And it's not available.
And it's unavailable.
And you have to still queue.
I saw queues. I didn't know this is what you guys... what you guys go through.
Look at this man.
Oh gosh, you guys go through this.
But we're glad that you're here, because if you weren't here and we're telling you about it, it would seem like we're exaggerating.
I've seen your queues on the front pages of the press. I don't know, because not that we don't have queues in Lagos either. I'm just saying.
It's just the political correctness. Government is trying to be politically correct, because if they let us know, look, this is
give us information.
Then people will make a meal out of it. But look, it is what it is.
Give us the information that at least will put people's minds at rest. What stands out for me, Malwe, is also on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, but at the bottom of the page, flood, 3.7 million residents, 362 communities at risk. That's coming from NEMA. Look at the bottom of the page. And it is not something that is unknown to us. It's not something that is coming to us strange. Front page of Daily Times newspaper has a similar story, and it actually says Kano is just one of 27 states where this is going to happen. NEMA advises immediate relocation as flood hits 27 states, warns 362 vulnerable communities at high risk of flood in Kano. One state, that level of vulnerability, definitely something that is concerning. And the impact on food cannot also be remonstrated. The impact of flooding on food cannot be sidelined or sidetracked. We know that, there are a number of people who are saying the indices of inflation have come down because of the price of food in some certain food items that have reduced. At the same time, the risk is still high if this level of vulnerability is still on. 27 states, and I'm very sure there's hardly a state in Nigeria that doesn't deal in one agricultural product or the other. So 27 states out of 36, how many do we have left? I don't even know if those ones are, so I think it is something to give, for government to give attention to, and let's drill it down to the local communities. 362 vulnerable communities in one state alone. How many vulnerable communities in other states? Something.
A few days ago, my husband and I were having a conversation, and he said, he gave a Yoruba proverb. He said, Ogun asotele. I now told him, just in case people are wondering what that means, a war that was long foretold, does not kill a cripple that is wise. A war that was long for. I hope I'm translating that correctly.
No, yes, you are.
A war that was long foretold.
We should give you an award for that one.
Does not kill a cripple that is wise.
Is the petrol price the war?
No. I'm looking at what Ayo is talking about in regards to flood and food. And I told him, I remember in that conversation, I said, look, the caveat there is a cripple that is wise. It's not that doesn't kill a cripple. The cripple must be wise. So I hope that when they're issuing all of these warnings, that we apply wisdom, that people are proactive and saying these things have been foretold. How can we mitigate the effect? You cannot stop rain from falling. It is sure to come. Maybe the deluge is going to be more than we can handle, even if we cleared all the drains. How can we make sure that we don't lose lives? And how can we make sure that we salvage whatever it is that we salvage? These are the kinds of things that we should see. There should be some proactivity. It shouldn't happen and then people lose their lives and then we're wondering, then what was the essence of the people who actually took pains to warn us? What is the essence of their jobs?
Well, one of the key words there is education. Educate the people. They need to know what to do, how to proceed. So we'll talk about education in just a moment. So stay on with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We've got Dr. Tanko Sununu here with us. He is the Minister of State for Education. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
1 year on, after you became a minister, I know you may have got your targets, but in the minds of people, they will be wondering now, why should we even keep Dr. Tanko or the minister in that sector of education? Because they will say, look, of what impact have they been? So tell us now. Has there been any impact whatsoever? What have you been doing in the last year?
Well, I think this question, people keep on asking, why doctor, why lawyer in an educational
No, not the
sector?
Qualification.
Yeah.
Just talking about what the ministry has achieved.
Yes, I know. I just want to make a background and to say that, well, we've tried to do a lot when we came in. We are guided by at least 3 or 4 basic things. One is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that places education under the concurrent list. And we have the understanding in that regard we require a very strong collaborative effort between state, local government, and federal government, with federal government setting the policy and then supervising the quality assurance of the educational sector and whatever have you done, and carrying people along in terms of development policy. And we also came with the notion that, look, we cannot assume that the national should just cook and send it to the state to just consume. So we came up with the concept of a strong collaboration, where whatever we are going to develop will start and end up with all of us, so that we have a document that is owned completely by us. That's one, the Constitution. We're also guided by the fact that the President came up with 8-point agenda, which he has put together through a strong actions in such a way to renew the hope of average Nigerians. And then in that 8-point agenda, there is also a specific area which addresses the special focus on social welfare, education, and health. And then we put all those, and the President also got ahead to ask us to sign an undertaking that we are going to deliver that to the society and general Nigeria, so that we can have a quality of education he desired for average Nigerian. And then we also came to look at also, we have a policy, the National Policy of Education 2013. We also review it, the provision and what have you, and then assess where we are. Finally, we receive briefing from interministerial, from our department and interministerial agencies, and then most importantly also the development partners within the country, then they also briefed us. Now, on seeing and identifying the gap, we said the best way for us is to see how can we develop a roadmap that will encapsulate all these 4 aspects that I earlier mentioned, so that we can have it as a working document, which we did. And then we also, as I said, through a strong collaboration, everybody was part of it, local government, state, and then at the federal level, which we also supervise that. Now, and we find that that is a really huge document. And we say, okay, can we still go further down to narrow it? We develop a 1-year plan so that we can see, and that most importantly in that plan, we also have an M&E component, which will monitor, evaluate, so that we can assess our progress. And then when we find that also, that we say, okay, can we also have a specific goal? And then we develop a goal in a form of project that we call DOTS, D-O-T-S. The D will stand for the data repository of all the institutions, students, teachers that we have in Nigeria, so that we'll be able to find the gap. What is the state of primary school in so ward, in so local government, and what is the state of our university in Okao, in Amfodio? You understand? We also want all that data so that we can have adequate planning.
But the thing about that is...
What? Sorry, you're saying DOTS, yes.
Yes, D-O-T-S.
Yes.
Dot project.
Okay.
Oh, I'm coming to the O is for the out-of-school children, which is a very strong menace in the country, and we have just seen the impact of what we have been saying in the last protests that happened. You find that the school age bearing, that is to say that from the almost 6 to 15 dominated at this. You see even a 7-year-old child leading a protest. So
is that your ministry failing in that regard?
No, anyway, what I'm saying is these are the issues that we are. That's why we are not failing. I'm trying to tell you what made us to conceptualize our activities to develop the DOT project.
Okay.
And then we now go into the component of the DOT. And then we say, okay, if you have a data, you also have students, out of school children, you are returning back to school, you also have existing that. The most important component is human resource for education. And that is the teachers. And so the T stand for teacher welfare, teacher training and retaining capacity building. What have you that we also discuss about the teaching? And then we say, okay, even if you have teachers, you have children, you give them the knowledge, you give them the morality they deserve. If they lack skill, they are still going back to where you are. So that is the S component of the DOT. So that will arm them with a strong...
The S is what?
Skills.
Skills.
Yes, so it involves skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. So it's that if you have out-of-school children, you return back to school, you combine them with the infrastructure development, and you have a better teachers to train them, then you must arm them with skills. Because the observation is here is that...
My apologies. The challenge with that is people don't even know. The example, Kano, the skill center produced or created by the federal government, set up by the federal government to upskill the people, as you say.
Yeah.
They vandalized it. And it's not something that was just built. Someone even made mention that it's something that's coming.
Yes, this is what I was saying.
Just a second.
Yeah.
So what is the... So it means that the communication link is lost at some point.
You see, this is what we are saying. You see, if you say you are renewing hope, it means that there is a hope before that has suffered over time, and you want to now restore it, rejuvenate it. And that is the concept of Mr. President. Nigeria were hopeful before, but with time, things get deteriorating, and people gradually begin to lose hope.
Let's even look
now
at
we are restoring the hope.
Let's look at your own dots that you've just told us now.
Yes.
Because people would they judge your ministry differently.
Yes.
Probably part of it will be these dots. In terms of the out-of-school children,
yes,
has it gone down? Because UNICEF put the figures about a little over 20 million about 8 months ago.
UNICEF tended to put it into 20 million, and I quite agree that there are a lot of disparity. If you go to other data, you find that...
What is Nigeria's data? What data is your ministry relying on?
You see...
How many are there?
We have a data under universal basic education of 10.6 million out-of-school children. You understand? But it also depends if you base yourself institutional or general public. You understand? So we said, okay, we also accept that of the UNICEF because of the wider parameters used. You understand? And we say, okay, let's also accept, even if it's 10.6 to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that is not acceptable.
No,
yes. And that's why you find
it's a little confusing.
If you look, yes.
You say UBEG data is what,
10.6. Yes.
But you also accept the wider one of
UNICEF,
because which is 20
you see,
million.
if you are taking data, it depends on what are the parameters you use. You can segregate your data to be age groups, say 0 to 15. How many of them are out of school children?
So what is
age-related?
The overall figure, the whole picture?
The overall figure is 20.5 million.
That is
the
so we're accepting that one.
We're accepting that, and we say we should say, if we accept it, now what are we doing? I think that's the most important.
So has it gone down? What have you done to reduce it?
This is what I'm going to explain, and that's why I'm here, and that's why you invite me. So that we now go to discuss.
Let's hear you.
Yes, you see, one weekend we realized that the out-of-school children are so this is alarming, and we said, what is the reason? And we look at the reason and we find the reason, and we say, okay, how do we now approach it? One, if you look at it, there is one infrastructural deficit. Children want to go to school, but there are no classes. And on our own, we say, okay, let's start from basic. And then we started constructing school. And then we say, okay, there are a lot of online palo at the Universal Basic Education Commission because state refused to pay matching grant. And we now, okay, the best way we can do is to develop a strong advocacy tool, and which we have been utilizing, going to state meeting with the commissioner, meeting the governor, addressing governors forum and rest. And as of today, the uptake of their matching grant component of the Universal Basic Education has improved. Virtually all the states as of today have utilized, have access.
Has improved too. So from what to what? Where were you and where are you now?
Yeah, before what I said in terms of the matching grant, before we have up to, I think about getting 12 or 15 states that have not accepted accesses. But as of today, all of them have access, and they are putting it into infrastructural use. You understand? And they will say, okay, there is also the issue of curriculum, which even if you put somebody in school, there is no curriculum enough to give him the education he deserves. And that also led us a learning crisis. We all agree with figures. It says that out of 4, if you have 4 children in Nigeria, 3 out of 4 have poor literacy, numeracy, and even critical thinking. It means that a child can read, but if you ask him what he has read, he wouldn't understand it. Numeracy, when you say 2 plus 2, yes, it's 4, but what does that 4 means? You cannot explain. And simple critical thinking is also lacking. And what is there? We realize that what is major issue there is the issue of the quality of our teachers.
You said as of today, almost all the states, about a few have not.
No, I said all have access there.
All have access?
Yes.
So has the figure for out-of-school children reduced?
Yes, it's reducing. Because when we came, in the last 1 year, when we did our review, we were able to, through the collaboration of Federal Ministry of Education and the state, to return back 2 million children to school, which I've also reported. So thereby reducing the figure. So you understand?
But this 20+ million out-of-school children is a recent figure from UNICEF. It was lower than this before, wasn't it?
But that's what I've said it. But on our own, we know we have returned and we have reduced the figure.
To what?
To almost 18 million now if you remove. Because we have already removed, we have returned back to 2 million. And then we say, okay, the effort really is this thing. Rather than leaving that to the state, let us also at federal level come and join actively. And we set our fund that we can put all the necessary ingredients that is needed for a child to be on school, ranging from his school bag, school fees, books, and other instructional material. And we are going to launch the campaign in September. We are starting with FCT.
From what you've said,
we are already in FCT right now.
Should we go away with
school out of school children who have been registered? That will now be returned to school in September.
If you say you've reduced the figure to about 18 million,
yes,
are you telling us now that when the next figures will be published, probably at the end of this year, it will be less?
It will be less.
18 million.
It will be less.
By whether UNICEF or thereabout.
Yes, exactly.
Dr. Surinu,
yes.
How do you get these data?
We get
from this particularly the 2 million that you're talking about.
We get this data
from the states.
We get this data from the state because we are participating actively. I physically witnessed 4 states in enrollment, and it was even shown even in channel television. I was in state. Minister has also gone to many other states. We do it. But what we say now, rather than we go and do it there, we are going to have a very active one.
Okay, just a quick one. The out-of-school children trajectory didn't just happen in one day.
Yeah.
It started over time.
Yes.
Until the point where you are talking about the efforts to reduce it now. What informed it in the first place?
What informed
that degradation to the point that we have 20 million children out of school?
You see, there are so many factors which I was trying to list before. You see, whether we agree or not, there is, I've mentioned, that's why the president came with renewed hope. There is loss of hope by parents.
No, I'm sorry. The reason I'm asking is, what's the assurance we have that when you leave office and this government is no longer in office, we're not going to go back to where we're coming from?
Okay, we are putting strategy that are strong enough. And when I say one of these strategies is to see that how we establish a strong collaboration in whatever we are doing, which is hitherto, right, it wasn't there. For example, we are coming to curriculum discussion. We have just finished, we have just launched our, we have almost rounding up the basic curriculum review, which has not been done for the past 14 years. And we are just about running. By September, we'll present it to the National Council of Education. And once in the approved, we have a latest curriculum that country will depend on, that will address all the gaps that were there. You understand? So if we do that, we have established that strong relationship in the old government with our distance. Thirdly, secondly, we're also trying with the ministerial commitment and political will to also increase the funding of education. Once that is done, we also add this in. And then we're also looking at the infrastructural development too. We want to put on ground things that will ensure sustainability.
Where I'm getting at, I apologize.
Yes.
Where I'm getting at is, we're talking about out-of-school children, not out-of-school youths.
Yes.
I would guess, in my naivety,
Yes.
that we're talking about the responsibility of states.
Yes.
We're talking about primary schools. We're talking about secondary schools.
But that's what I mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
Strong collaboration between state and federal government.
What informed the states not doing that before now, so that we don't get back there again? Because if the federal government has to intervene all the time, then the Nigerian doesn't care who gets these things done.
Yes, the major issue that arose before now was lack of strong collaboration. Federal government assuming that it has all it takes to develop education, develop a policy, and then send it to the state for state to just accept. You understand? But now we say no, that's not correct. Let's start from the policy. When we develop a concept, we invite all the state commissioners, state universal education board chairman, and we presented the documents to them. We said, okay, go back, critique it. They went and did, and we reconvene again. You understand? We all agree on that. I say, okay, now we are heading towards moving to National Council on Education. So we say now, okay, the document that we have all had during the joint consultative committee meeting, which was held in Yobe some few weeks ago, those documents were presented to the joint consultative committee review, which comprises the permanent secretaries and all the other stakeholders in education, including the development partners, UNICEF, World Bank. And it was looked closely, and all states agreed. No state was left out in that decision. And then when we now came, after it was done, just about 4 days ago, we have pre-validation meeting. And all the commissioners were all there, and then it had been shown by Bachelor, all the chairs were. It was not a room cook meeting, no, it was an open meeting. People came, we further criticize it and look at it, how relevant it is. Can it address the needs of a current 21st century? And we have all agreed that we are heading ahead. And that
What's new in this document?
Well, there are so many new on this document. The our curriculum review is very new one. We look at the issue, we have learning crisis, poor numeracy, poor literacy, and then lack of critical thinking, which is this thing. And we realize that why do we have all these things? We have two major issues. Our foundation learning, early childhood education, care and development was lacking. Either it was essentially dominated by public, by private settings, such as having nursery school and other this. And majority of Nigerians also go to public schools. So we now say, okay, that must also be introduced in this curriculum. And already we have instructed colleges of education to start training specialists in that field, so that we have a lot of NCE teachers who can now go into a meeting with that. And then, luckily for us, we also have other NGOs who are so much interested in early childhood care and development. Even yesterday, I hosted some of them in our group that we are partnering with, and then UNICEF is also giving us the technical support in that direction. Then if you look at also the second aspect that also make it unique is that we know that we have teacher crisis. And in teacher crisis, we have to find a way of addressing it. We say, okay, while we are training, we increase training and retraining. Why can't we also incorporate technology into it so that we can ease our way of doing this and that? And we all witnessed when we launched and we commissioned our digital resource center in Kado. And this is aimed at our training. We have already have the first level of training, which they were in Korea, they received all the training, and we have completely installed all the gadgets we needed for internal training, and training has commenced at the Kado. And we say, okay, the Kado enough is not enough. Let us also have zonal centers. And even just about 5 days ago, the commissioner, the minister and myself were at Karishi Smart School, and we inspected all the this and there. This is also a new development, and also the curriculum has addressed what we are doing. We are saying, no, let's not develop curriculum that we cannot operate. So while we are developing the curriculum, we are also providing a strong ground that curriculum can be translated into action.
Is that talking about the policy? Because I've looked at the national policy on education a few times, and I was looking for something futuristic. I couldn't find any.
This is what I'm saying. It's all the review we are doing.
You're talking about the curriculum now.
Yes.
How about the policy?
Yeah, the policy is also being reviewed too. You understand? We are not doing
what is to be included in that? Because a good number of, as I said, I looked at it just about a year or two ago. I looked at it at about a year or two ago, and I'm looking at anything from.
No, if you look at the policy,
not a single mention, to the best of my knowledge, of anything technology.
No. Look at the 2013 national policy. Look at the 2013 national policy.
I looked at the 2014 document, sir.
There's technology into it. And I will also say, I quite agree. For a very long time, a lot were not reviewed, which I've admitted right from the word go. And I told you we are reviewing. For example, look at the craft and trade. That has not been reviewed for over 15 years now. And that's why we're having problems. Our vocational schools are dying, everything are dying. But in about 4 weeks ago, we have finished that. And as soon as in the next few weeks, the publication will finish, and we'll develop it, and we'll start using it.
Sorry,
and that's why even to match it also, even for the vocational aspect, we have to go and start constructing vocational institution in our state.
Well, Honorable Minister, I have to say that a lot really rests on the shoulder of the Ministry of Education, because we're talking essentially about the future of this country.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that you highlighted the protests as a signal. As one of the signals that really brings, will I say, the urgency of what needs to be done in the area of education to the forefront.
Yes, fast track what we are doing.
Yes, because, I mean, a lot of people were bothered about what happened with the protest, the fact that children were involved in that protest, and a lot of them not very aware of what it was that was happening around them. So I know a number of things have also happened that has the potential to be able to address this. I'll give you an instance. LG autonomy. The primary school education is supposed to be domiciled with local governments, even though generally we know that state governments have taken over largely. According to them, they're the ones who sometimes pay salaries of teachers, etc., etc. But essentially, primary school education, as designed by our own constitution and how we operate it, is supposed to be taken care of by local governments. With this local government autonomy, which has now been approved by has been I don't know now, I'm looking for the right word, but maybe I should go with approved, by the Supreme Court of Nigeria, saying that local governments should be able to get their monies directly, financial autonomy. Are you finding a way to collaborate, or do you think that local government should not be involved in this discussion?
You see, this is what I said earlier, and I quite make it possible. When I mentioned 4 levels of our consideration to develop where we are now, I mentioned education as a constitutional provision, being in the concurrent list, realizing that local government has a lot to do. If you even say, even local government has the most responsibility to do, because averagely, Nigeria has a lot of younger age group. If you say 0 to 15 constitute almost 45% of population of Nigeria, of over 200 million Nigerians, you are right. And this at the age of group of what? Primary school level. And I quite agree it's the responsibility of the local government to provide primary education. But also at national level, we have responsibility to assure quality assurance and also give our support. And it's also in that regard that we are giving the scope, going to even develop, to construct classes in primary school, and then equip it, and then hand it over to the local government to set.
You're constructing classes? The Ministry of Education is constructing classes?
As a supporting state through the University of Education, we have to do that. We have the mandate to do it. We have the mandate
through you back?
Yes. We have the mandate to do it because it's a support. We also have the listen.
Is that where the help and support is really needed?
Because
support, one of the things you talked about.
I mentioned the area of collaboration.
Yeah, you mentioned data.
We are coming to the teacher training. That will also have
just before you go to the teacher training, because you've talked about how UBEC is building. UBEC has the mandate to build classrooms or support, as the case might be.
Yeah.
And you mentioned data as part of the project that you're looking at overall. What data has compelled you to say that the investment that you really need should be around building of classrooms?
I didn't say only that. I didn't say that. The data that shows that there are a lot of infrastructural defects. For now, by UBEC data, we require over 200,000 classes to meet the demand of our distance. If you that's the one we need. If you go back and look at the existing ones also, we have a lot of infrastructural decay. You understand? So it means we have two issues here: renovating and rehabilitating the ones we have, and then adding the ones that needed to be. And why is it also these classes are very important? We have 20 million out of school, and we are trying to massively move them to school. If you bring them in a school that doesn't have class, it doesn't make sense. So that's why we also have to go pari passu. While we are enrolling, we are also providing necessary
this infrastructure development you talk about. Federal government colleges are directly under your purview as Minister of States.
Yes.
What's going on there? Because a lot of them are really in bad shape.
In the next few weeks to come, I assure you go round. Virtually all the 115 federal unity colleges and government colleges that we have will see a massive infrastructural development.
You use the word massive.
Yes, massive. In terms of renovation, construction, security measures like street lights, many others. That I assure you. I hardly said what I don't have confidence in it. But President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has given a lot of decent directives, and it's also back with funds.
Because I remember the former Minister of Education, Dr. Ezekiel Silishi, they tried to do a lot to see how can unity schools just be back on stream in terms of what it was before, such that the alumni associations were the ones who are now trying to even see, can they take them over? But now that you're saying this, it means that, look, they don't need to worry. Government will be up and running this time.
No, you see, education cannot say this thing. There are education, apart from statutory funding, the acts of UBEC, the act of many institutions provided for collaboration and support. So I must say that we are grateful to the Alumni Association. They have contributed in terms of infrastructural development in our institution. They have also contributed in terms of even going ahead to provide instructional materials, in terms of also employing teachers in the school. And already now we have the list of all those teachers being employed by the PTA, which we are working with the head of service office to ensure that we get them transformed into civil servants of the Federal Republic of Nigeria so that they can continue to teach our children. But it still does not mean that we have enough, because we still have a funding gap. And there are reasons for that. Mr. President has the willingness to make education funding as the best. But there are other core factors that must be addressed in order education to stand on its own. Security is very vital.
I was just about to ask you about the Safe Schools initiative. Where are we with that?
That is okay. Security is very vital. So we are lucky that the president, because of his political will, we are second to the best. And we are sure if the security improved by the political will of the president, education will lead in terms of budgetary allocation. Self-school initiative is a concept that is there and is being working, and we have worked tirelessly to ensure that we have repositioned it.
Okay.
We realize that there are defects in the system we made in terms of safe school initiative.
There's this question from, pardon me to jump in. It's Samuel Olaron that he says we should ask you. He's a staff in one of the FUCs. He was promoted 3 years ago, but yet to receive the promotion arrears, even when he's about to go for another promotion. Not just him, he says, for a lot of other people.
You see, I would say that we met a lot of issues in terms of arrears, of which, luckily by virtue of my being a unionist and also heading a lot of negotiation at the Federal House of Representatives when I was there, and I think even by coming here, I've had so many meetings in terms of negotiation to see how we can address that issues. Those issues were tabled before even the Federal Executive Council, and we have a directives for four interministerial committee: budget, education, finance, so that we can come up with all those claims that are still pending, so that we can present it to Mr. President for consideration and solving those problems. So there are issues of arrears we made, and we are addressing them quite all right.
Okay.
So we can't even look at the constitutional provision in section 18.
You what?
Section 18, subsection
Yes.
3 says government shall strive to eradicate illiteracy, and to this end government shall, as and when practicable, provide free, compulsory and universal primary education,
Yes.
free university education, and free adult literacy programs. So we can't even talk about all of those ones when you are still looking for funds, right?
You see, the issue is that the Constitution is made in such a way that it's one, that's the keyword there, when practicable.
Exactly.
That's the keyword.
And thank you for
see,
going
one
there. Just a second. Just a second.
Yes.
This is the 1999 Constitution.
This is what I'm saying, one
It's
practicable.
25
And Mr.
years
President
old.
is
So
working.
25 years after, it's still not practicable.
Mr. President, we are working to make it practicable.
And so you see, when we talk about government, it goes back to what I always say about over-centralizing issues. Yeah. Now there is financial autonomy for local government administrations.
So it's not
Don't they have a role? Don't they have a role to play?
They have
What
a role to
role
play.
do states have
They have
to
a role to
play
play
to ensure that this provision of government, free, compulsory, and universal primary, it's not that it's never been done.
They have a role to play, and we are collaborating with them, and that's why I told you.
Okay.
We as authority in the education, we don't underrate the role of local government. And we have never developed a policy that local government is not part of it.
All right, well, we're winding down, Minister. So
Yes,
tell
sir.
us, I mean, notwithstanding what your ministry is doing now, but we've seen what has happened before, and chances are that that neglect could happen again, probably when your time is over. So is there any consideration, if it doesn't exist already, such that your ministry might suggest further, look, there are several people, institutions, groups out there, companies who want to do something about funding education. Is there a way you can, if they do participate, at least elevate that conversation and make it serious that, yes, tax breaks and things like that, so that people can come in and play roles in education?
You see, as I mentioned earlier, the education field is open to a lot of collaborations. And we are looking at how can we even make it easier for us. The ease of working business in education is the most what is needed. And we have the backing of Mr. President to go into that. You understand? And that's why we said government alone cannot do it. We have issues of access, even, look at it. And that's why even I was here one time I said, the Minister of Education had look, we have a lot of candidates qualified to go for institution and they hardly go. What is there? The space is lacking. And some people even go across the border in a few months to come with a degree. So we said that that is not acceptable. So we said, let's open up the educational field. And that's why last time when I was here, I developed the concept of transnational education. And as of today, the National University Commission has gone into a lot of discussion with so many foreign universities who are ready to come and invest in our educational field, give the quality of education similar to their own, but in mind taking our local content and requirement so that we can move ahead and provide our distance. So we are open to a lot of distance. Not only that, even business people can come. We develop strong public-partner
There has to be some sort of policy.
Yes, we have.
So they can latch on to.
We have the policy. I said transnational education. Transnational education is a policy of the federal government as approved by PEC. We also have
Transnational education?
Yes, transnational education.
What does that mean?
Transnational education is a system of education whereby you can cross your boundary to come and collaborate with another nation in providing education. And it arises because the International Labour Organization has considered education as an exportable product. So leveraging on that, we developed a concept that you can come. If the Cambridge University, well, I think the first university that came is almost established in 1760 in US.
Yeah, I'm talking about Nigerian businesses. Not
yes, they are coming
foreign...
here. Even the Nigerian ones. How many, as of today, we have more private tertiary institutions than government.
Okay, so
we have more private institutions. This is where we have opened up the way.
So
if you have the resources, we make your way easy. We also assist you to have your own private.
Okay, I hear you. But so, what is your target? I mean, you 1 year in office for the ministers. Yes. Of course, you know that lots of Nigerians don't think a lot of them have done anything as to why should they continue as ministers. So, in the event that you continue up until next 3 years, what is the target of your ministry? What do you want to achieve before leaving office?
What we want to target is to have a qualitative education that will give us a candidate who is morally sound armed with knowledge,
Minister,
and then have skills.
That sounds political.
No, it's not political.
It's
not political. This is what we are working for. Quality of education is in the door. Teacher training and teacher training. Increasing the capacity of teachers. Moving students back to school.
How many teachers?
How
many teachers do you want to employ in the next 3 years?
Not in the next 3 years. So we are working with the head of service. In the next few weeks to come, we'll get the waiver and everything to employ 3,500 teachers for our unity school. If you go to we have emphasized to the state governors, through the Nigerian governors, and the need of human resource of education, because that's the best you can have. Put all the gadgets. When there is no person to manage, it's of no use. And state are now recruiting. Kano is recruiting over 4,000 islands. KB have started recruiting over 2,000, and many other states, Lagos states are recruiting, Bachelor states are recruiting, because you realize that look, for the foundation of this country, education must receive.
Do you think we should do away with quota system in education?
You see, when you say to do away with the quota system in education, I would like that everybody must be given the chance to attend the highest as well. But you see, when you are working with data, you have to also prioritize area of intervention. For example, if you say your state have 70% out of school children, and then you said another state, DC, has only 5% out of school children. If you intervene in the 5%, you have to intervene. But if you said you give them equal intervention, your figure will not change.
Well, you spoke about quality education.
Yes.
Qualitative education. So if those things don't come via merit, how do we then project? Because it keeps away several people who are qualified because of the quota system. They can't get in.
No, it's not. It's not this. You see, you look at the concept. There is merit. There is catchment areas. There are so many this when it comes to this. And we all quite agree that we have paucity of this thing. The space there available cannot absorb everybody. And that's why we said we are bringing another concept, which is a new introduction. This to provide more access. And most importantly, the major deterrent is poverty that is pervading society in terms of access to tertiary education. And we must say kudos to Mr. President for approving the student loan scheme, which is performing wonderfully well.
We have to thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
So, but I'm hoping that at least we'll be able to look at the data of your performance moving forward subsequently and see how that impacts everybody else. But thank you for coming on, and all the best to you.
Thank you.
Business Morning on Sunrise Today comes up now.
Interesting conversation there with the Minister of Education. And of course, a nation that doesn't have educated individuals can hardly talk about economic activities going the positive way, yes? Thank you so much, Ayo, Markwe, and Chamberlain for that. Now, I'm got to do business now for just about 30 minutes here on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We start from the global space as usual. Oil prices were set for a second straight week on gains, and that's despite edging lower on Friday as recent U.S. economic data boosted optimism over demand in the world's top oil consumer. Brent futures looked set for 1.3% weekly rise, while U.S. Texas Intermediate crude entries was also following closely at 1.2%. Looking at the numbers this morning, it's in the red 0.4%. That's for Brent, $80.74 a barrel. WTI, that's West Texas Intermediate crude, at $77.76 a barrel, and that's 0.5% in the red. U.S. retail sales, that data was expected yesterday, beat analyst expectations, while separate data showed fewer Americans had filed new applications for unemployment benefits last week, and that sparks renewed optimism around that U.S. economic growth. So still counting down to see if we would do that September cut by the Fed. A fresh round of negotiations have also started to secure a ceasefire in the Gaza war, even as Israeli troops continue their assault on the Palestinian enclave. These are the two factors that are driving sentiments around oil this morning. And then we come home to the Naira and keep our eyes there and see. We had gains yesterday. No intervention from the central bank, no auction yesterday, but yet we saw the Naira gain, a good one. And we hope that this is our way to stability. So we see the NAFEM went from 1,586 Naira 4 kobo, which is open at, and closed at 1,578 Naira 82 kobo. It gained 0.46%. That's is impressive, an impressive movement right there. While for NAFEX, it was more than 1%, 1.35 to close at 1,564 Naira 48 kobo. Do we settle here? Can this be a comfortable value for the Naira at this time? I guess investors will tell you what is most important is stability and certainty, and then we can now talk about the value. So, I mean, analysts are saying they see this being the level for at least some time now. And then also yesterday, the Debt Management Office has issued that Series 1 of the federal government's Nigeria's $500 million domestic bond to local and foreign investors. This was made known at the launch. The launch was yesterday. It was a hybrid roadshow for debt security and had in attendance, top on the list, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, the DG of the Debt Management Office, Ms. Patience Oniha, the Group Managing Director of NGX, was eventually to head to the capital market, as Mr. Temi Kupola, as well as others. And this move, they say, is part of government's broader strategy to boost dollar liquidity in the country's foreign exchange markets.
Gathered at the historic launch of the Series 1 Federal Government of Nigeria dollar-denominated domestic bond are some top government officials as well as key stakeholders in the nation's financial market.
My question is on
the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, who is the keynote speaker at the event, says the $500 million domestic bond, which is certified as being lower risk, targets Nigerians, non-Nigerians residing in the country, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora.
There are Nigerians living in Nigeria whose savings are abroad. This is the time to back your own country. This is the time to buy a well-structured, profitable, safe, competitive investment rather than keeping your money abroad, provide it to the Nigerian economy to create jobs and reduce poverty and support the program of macroeconomic reform and job creation that is now going on in Nigeria. That's what this is all about.
Providing further details of the offer, the Managing Director of Investment Banking at United Capital, the lead eater in house, Mr. Gbadebo Adenrele, explains what the government intends to do with proceeds of the dollar-denominated domestic bond.
It will be invested in some key sectors, critical sectors, that will be approved by the President. So the President has to approve this, but this will be on the recommendation of the Honorable Minister of Finance, and this will be subject to appropriation by National Assembly. So that allows everyone to see that there is due process in this, and more importantly, it is ring-fenced. It's going to key sectors that will develop the economy and allow for increased revenue and, as the Minister has rightly mentioned.
In a question and answer session, the Minister affirms his optimism that this new bond will bolster confidence in Nigeria's financial markets.
It is our expectation, and in fact, we are highly confident that this first series of $500 million will be well accepted and received by the market. We expect it to be fully taken up, and we expect demand to even exceed supply. That's how confident we are in our system, in the talent of our financial operators, and also in the confidence that the financial markets and Nigerian investors worldwide will have in this particular issue of US dollar bonds domestically.
The issuance of the domestic dollar debt security, which is the first of its kind in the country, begins on Monday, August the 19th, and will be listed on the Nigerian Exchange Limited and the Financial Market Dealers Quotation (FMDQ) platforms at a minimum subscription of $10,000 in line with the government's 2029 Eurobond.
So that's it, an interesting one. And I think one interesting thing coming out from that, according to the MD of United Cap, is the promise that it will be purpose-driven
and purpose-focused. And I'm sure a lot of investors will be interested in that. I think that's one of the reasons why Sukuk bonds are so well, efficient, if we could put it that way. So I guess the federal government, or led by the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy, will have to show us how that's going to work, and that might be a strategy to get even more investors. As he said, we expect it to be oversubscribed and get more than $500 million right there. Then another issue going on is the CMC, that's the Capital Market Committee's meeting. They're done with their second meeting for the year. The Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Dr. Momotimi Agama, shared some discussions from the meetings. Ms. Agama notes that there's been record time approval of 9 issuances worth 1.228 trillion naira in the midst of the bank's recapitalization. Of course, the banks have been very busy. Well, another area of interest for the DG is the 111% increase of net asset value that's managed by fund managers. And it says there's even more works that the committee or SEC is working on.
In terms of registration of market players, the bulk of capital market operators and sponsored individuals which had either to been held back for some time now have now begun to receive registration. So all of our backlogs are being cleared and new registrations are going to start taking place, as it should take place within the law and the regulations of the SEC. In terms of the unclaimed dividends, we are strongly working towards the resolution of all unclaimed dividend issues. As much as possible, it may be impossible to get it to zero level, but we know clearly with the strategies we are adopting and, of course, the interest of the legislators and all parties concerned, we are making all efforts to make sure that that unclaimed dividend is reduced, not about its reduction, that investors actually who are entitled to those unclaimed dividends receive their monies as at when due. For those that are unclaimed, they are able to reach out to the brokers and everybody that's involved to get them to get back their money. For we, as a new management, we see that as a major booster to investors' confidence, and we'll do everything possible for investors to reclaim their money. We are going to set up a special unit at the SEC that speaks directly to the issues of unclaimed dividend, having to resolve those issues, because we discover that a lot of investors are having some minor challenges in trying to get access to those unclaimed dividends. So the SEC is setting up a small office at the headquarters and indeed probably at the branch offices, so that investors who have challenges of getting their monies back will certainly have a way to get it back seamlessly, and because that is very, very important to us.
Well, assurance is there that perhaps in the near future, the issue of unclaimed dividends would be a thing of the past. Well, that's one of the words that the DG of SEC is promising us. Now, yesterday we had a bit of good news. It's been a while since we had some economic good news, but we saw inflation for July ease, and I think that was mostly unexpected. I don't think I really see forecasts from economists on that. Now, we see that headline inflation dropped. It dropped by 0.8%. And at 33.4%. Remember, this is coming from 34% to 33.4%. But when you look at that's compared to what we had in June, and then we also saw month-on-month basis. Year-on-year, it's still high, obviously, when you compare July of 2023 to 2024 base year effect. We still expect, because it was really high last year. So when you compare it to July of 2023 year-on-year, you see it's up 9.32%. Now, month-on-month basis, we see that for a month increase, it's 2.28%, and that's lower than what we had in June. June, it was 2.31%. So it dropped 0.03% when you look at June as a month and July as a month, 2024. We look at urban inflation and we see that it's 35.77%. And it's 9.94% higher year on year compared to same time last year, while rural inflation is just about 8.77% higher compared to this time last year. So, but I mean, conversations I've had off camera on this, a lot of people have asked, so we see it has dropped, prices are supposed to have dropped 0.8%, but no, it's the rate of increase that has actually reduced. But let's get a bigger picture or a more realistic picture now with economist and the Chief Executive Officer of CPPE, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Yusuf, good morning and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you.
So for the first time in 19 months, we can actually report that inflation has dropped in Nigeria. I wonder if we should really smile, because people are saying prices in the market are not really reflecting this.
Well, I think it calls for some celebration, some cautious celebration, I must say. Just as you said, over the last 19 months, we have been seeing an increase in inflation. So for the first time, we are seeing a deceleration. I think that is good news. But what is important ultimately is to see the prices come down. Because sometimes people get confused with these terminologies. Reduction in inflation rate does not imply reduction in prices. Just as you said, what it implies is reduction in the rate of increase. So what the citizens are looking forward to is actually what you can call deflation. That is reduction in prices. And I think this is a very good first step. We are seeing a deceleration. We are hoping that by the time we progress into the rest of the year, we begin to see a much more impact, especially from some of the measures that the government is trying to put in place with respect to, trade policy, reduction in import duty of food items, possibly also if we see an improvement in our refining of domestic refining of petroleum products. And of course, we are likely to see progressively a greater impact of the base effect on inflation. So from July, August, September, we expect to see a much more better scenario in terms of the inflation numbers.
Yeah, because even before now, there's the expectation that by August, I think a lot of people did not see this reduction in the inflation rate for July. They see it more in August because, even as you noted, the import waiver kicks in, started yesterday. So by the end of this month, we should be able to see the impact. That means that we should see numbers even cool further by the end of August.
Yes. That is what I expect to see. But again, we need to also appeal to the bureaucracy. Because it is one thing for the government to announce a policy. It's another thing for those policies to be expeditiously implemented. One is worried about the lag between policy pronouncements and policy implementation. And that is something that we need to address. Because this issue of inflation and cost of living is an emergency. We should address it with the urgency that it demands. We have seen the way the citizens have been reacting and all of that. So we need to be more expeditious in the way we address it. So I'm hoping that if the implementation is accelerated, we are likely to begin to see a reduction, even more reduction in the prices of goods. And don't forget, the trade policy angle or the fiscal policy measure that is being put in place is targeting more of the food component. And if you look at the basket of these inflation issues we are confronted with, the biggest component, almost 60-70%, is arising from food inflation. So if we're able to get a handle on that, I think that will help to further moderate prices going forward. And secondly, we are beginning to see some stability of some sort in the foreign exchange, in the exchange rate, even though the rate is still high. But I can see that the CBN is now not taking some interventionist position to ensure that we keep the rate within a particular band, 1,005, 1,500, 1,006, which is also good. I think that will also help in the moderation of the inflation situation. And I'm also getting reports that even the security situation in some of the agricultural, agri-producing areas are also getting better, which means that with the efforts of some state governments or some nationals trying to support agri-production, we're also likely to see an improvement, because the reduction we are beginning to see also has a seasonality component, because we are beginning to see some reduction, in some of the prices, particularly tomato, pepper, onions, and so on. It's not just a reduction in the inflation; it's actually a reduction in price. So we expect that to be replicated across all the food segments and other sectors of the economy going forward.
Yes, I think you touched on the next thing I would like for us to look at, which is the seasonality of it, because we know one of the reasons we're seeing a tapering of prices, especially the perishables, is that it's harvest period. And so we also know even that this import waiver season ends in December. So, I mean, it begs the question, what are we doing behind the scene to prepare us for after this bountiful season that we're having, both the harvest and the import waiver?
Well, I think what we need to do a lot more of is to ensure all year round, farming. Because for so many years, we have been hooked on to this rain-fed agriculture, where you have your harvest, you planting during rainy season, where it is the weather or the climatic cycle that determines the way we farm. We should migrate away from that to ensure that we have all year-round farming. And that can only happen if we invest a lot more in our water resource development. In other words, ensuring that the use of irrigation is much more, is much more upscaled, so that all the year round people can farm. I think that for me is very critical. And also leveraging technology. I know that there has been a lot of debate around this GMP and all of that, but we need to interrogate that a lot more to see how we can infuse a lot more technology in agriculture. Because that is what is happening all over the world and across all sectors. Technology is changing the face of every sector. That should also happen in agriculture. And we expect the subnationals to also be to be up and doing as far as agricultural production is concerned, because they have even bigger role to play, in agri-production than even the federal government. They are closer to the farmers. They have more responsibility in terms of land. They are the custodian of the land and all of that. And they also have, the responsibility of providing some critical inputs, even to the farmers, like machineries, like harvesters, like agrochemicals, and all of that. So while the government is dealing with the fiscal policy components of agri-production and agri-productivity, the subnationals have to do a lot more with physical involvement to support those who are in agriculture. I think for me that is very critical.
Yeah, other than agriculture, we know the issue of transportation, energy costs also contributes largely to these inflation numbers. I wonder if you see that also tapering in the coming months.
Well, with the promise, or with the expectation that our domestic refining of petroleum products will increase, hopefully in the next 1 or 2 months, that should help to bring down energy costs. And with the promise by government that at least some concessionary terms will be given to domestic refineries in terms of purchasing the crude in naira and all of that, if we're able to upscale domestic refining, first, there will be less vulnerability to exchange rate shocks. We see what is happening geopolitically now. We are likely to see a much higher increase in crude oil price, which often lead to higher domestic energy costs. So if we are able to be shielded from that as a result of increase in domestic refining of petroleum products, we are likely to see some stability in terms of energy prices. I think that for me is very good. And if we are able to also increase the domestic refining, we are likely to see less pressure on our foreign exchange reserve, on our foreign exchange market, which will help to also stabilize the exchange rate. And because exchange rate is also a very critical factor in inflation. So if you have that pass-through effect through the reduction in importation of petroleum products, stabilizing the exchange rate, that will also have an impact in inflation. Because both inflation and energy costs are very critical factors. I mean, both the energy cost and exchange rate are very critical factors in the inflation situation. So I think the outlook is looking positive in my view. We're able to stay the course and pursue all these policies conscientiously, and also ensure that the intervention from the fiscal policy side are also done in a very transparent manner, so that we will give concessions of importation of this thing to companies that really have the capacity to make an impact. You don't want these things to get into the hands of people who will now be looking for a third party to go and import these things. I think that should not happen. So I think we are on course, to reversing this very challenging situation of high cost of living.
Yeah, well, talking about energy security there, we were told that the Port Harcourt refinery would begin operations this month. But, I mean, okay, we're just in the middle of the month. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but it seems it's gone a bit quiet in that aspect. Also, of course, we're expectant from Dangote refinery, also PMS. Was another promise coming from there. I guess if we could have products from these two domestic refiners, as well as the modular refineries who have been working behind the scene. Also, I guess, as you said, the pressure on FX might reduce and we might see better numbers for the Naira.
Yes, of course. Because the beauty of domesticating or localizing refining is, one, reducing the costs arising from importation. Because the cost of importation is influenced first by the high crude oil price, second by the exchange rate. So we localize the refining and production of petroleum products, that component will be out of it. So that helps to bring down energy costs. Then there is a macroeconomic impact through the exchange rate. Because the less you exert pressure of importation on the foreign exchange market, the higher the prospects of stability in the foreign exchange market. The higher the prospects of the Naira even gaining a lot more strength. So it has the prospect of improving the macroeconomic environment, particularly through the exchange rate, and also it has the prospect of reducing energy costs. And those two variables are very, very critical, to stabilizing the economy and reducing and moderating the current temperature as far as cost of living, inflation, cost of production, cost of transportation is concerned. So the impact will be very, very profound and very significant.
Yeah, we look forward to the days of energy security in the country. Thank you so much, Chief Executive Officer of CPPE, Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Well, we do hope that by this time next month, when we have inflation numbers, we would also have a cause to smile or celebrate, but more importantly, that it reflects in the price of commodities and goods, out there. Now let's do a little bit of market review from yesterday's trade before we head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio. It was still a negative trade at the close of the market yesterday, first day. We saw that the oil share index dropped 0.10%, and it's hovering around 55 trillion naira. It's a thin line right there with the 55 trillion naira, 55.1 trillion naira. The market lost 56 billion naira at the close of trade. The activity chart was very red yesterday. I mean, even during the intraday conversation, and our analyst warned us ahead of this, said it was a very quiet day. And so I guess we shouldn't have expected anything less. So we see that value, volume, and deals were dropped. The biggest drop was, however, with the value, more than 35%. Banking was able to recover a bit, but slightly. I guess not strong enough to move the market. Consumer goods was down. Industrial goods almost unchanged. Insurance also recovered 0.41%. Oil and gas also recovered. But unfortunately, these were not strong enough to change the sentiment in the market. Perhaps we can build on that today. We'll see at intraday. Top trades yesterday, Veriscap, Sterling, and ICO. For a second day now, we see ICO in the top trades. Well, at intraday, we would have to bring you, of course, updated numbers. The smaller market, the NASD, yesterday was recovered 0.37%. We see there at 1,481 for its index. Market cap at more than 2 trillion naira at the close of trade. A mixed color is what we see for the activity charts. Right there, stocks were 42, and that's about 20% higher. But a big value drop right there, more than 90% at the value to close at 113.49 million. That's for the unlisted market. But we'll give you fresh numbers at intraday. It's with you and I again later on at 1 p.m. Let's do it for Business Incorporated. But for now, let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.
Incidentally, ECOWAS chairman, who happens to be Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, has proposed a standby force to combat terrorism. So if that comes on stream, what role will Denmark be willing to do, or partner, or come in what way?
ECOWAS plays a very important role as a provider of peace and stability in the region. This is what we discussed also with the foreign minister today, and what we will discuss with President Tinubu later today. So we continue to encourage Nigeria to use that role. Also now that Nigeria is in the second year of the presidency. Now, as regards the standby force, we are looking at getting further information about that, and we are ready to discuss further once we have more information. But we have not seen any specifics, yes.
Traditional dancers and people waving flags waiting for the arrival of President Bola Tinubu. Immediately he arrives, he's received by the Prime Minister of Equatorial Guinea, Mrs. Manuela Roca Bote. From there, he's taken to the Presidential Palace and welcomed by President Teodoro Obiang Mbasogo. After a military parade, the two leaders are led to the highlight of the day's event, the signing of an agreement on the Gulf of Guinea pipeline project. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, and his counterpart also signed the agreement. President Tinubu hailed the agreement as a significant step towards opening up new opportunities for gas exploration and employment, while also emphasizing the need for African nations to work together to promote peace, stability, and prosperity on the continent.
We have to look inwards to solve these problems for ourselves. We equally discuss areas of security, marine, blue economy, what intercontinental agreement will do for us to promote, food sufficiency for Africa.
The president of Equatorial Guinea said bilateral relations with Nigeria over many years have been rewarding and emphasized the need to deepen cooperation across salient areas. President Tinubu was then led to a state dinner in his honor. Speaking at the event, the president employed African leaders to make more strategic and deliberate efforts to address the exodus of skills and talent from Africa.
Our problem is not that we don't understand what to do. We identify them, we understand what to do. Our problem is how and when we should do them. And I say the time is now.
President Tinubu is on a 3-day official visit to Equatorial Guinea, which is to feature a review of opportunities to improve bilateral relations between the two countries. Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
All right, so joining us this morning to weigh in on some of those issues highlighted in those reports, Mr. Bayo Olowake, an international affairs analyst. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so tell us first, let's get your general impression about the handling of this matter between Nigeria and this Chinese company with the French court's decision. Now, when you say Nigeria, many thought, whoa, how did Nigeria even come into this in the first place? It's supposed to be Ogun State, but from what we've seen, it's just been going back and forth. Nigeria now say they're working with Ogun State to see how they can ensure that things are set right. In terms of how this has been handled, what do you make of it?
Well, when I heard the news, I was a little bit surprised. Then of course, I saw the statements of the federal government, which clearly highlighted the fact that this was some sort of a dispute between the Chinese company and the government of Ogun State. But then the Chinese, as is now in the public domain, have instituted proceedings against the Federal Republic of Nigeria and France, which led to the seizure of some federal assets, mainly some of the presidential aircraft. I think, first of all, the issue of dispute between a subnational state in Nigeria and then international entity will invariably involve the federal government, because in international law, especially when it comes to international arbitration, it will be the government of Nigeria that will be the first, if you like, respondent, because internationally, Nigeria is the one that plays within that arena. Subnationals don't play in the international arena. Only the federal government, for instance, has a Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The states don't have ministries of foreign affairs. And should it be a question of a loan, in this case, it is not a loan, but I'm just using this as an example. Should it be the question of a subnational in Nigeria, say any of the states, obtaining a loan from an international entity, that loan will have to be guaranteed by the federal government. Because like I said, only the federal entity plays in the international arena. So to this extent, one will understand why the federal government has been taken to court. And I think the explanation of the federal government is also alludes to this. And then it also highlights the fact that it is engaging with the Ogun State government to try to resolve the matter. I was hoping that this would not get to this level. The exact details of how we arrived here are not public, even though the statement of the federal government gave some decent background information. And so I feel that the federal government would have to deal with this matter, internationally, especially to get those assets that have been frozen to be released. One worrisome fact, though, is that it would appear, going by the information that the federal government has put in the public domain, that the Chinese entity is trying to profit from some sort of a loophole and reap where it did not sow, so to speak. But then we will need to hear from the Chinese perspective and then see how the matter will be resolved. The fact that the Chinese had tried to institute proceedings against the federal government in the United States and the United Kingdom and had not been so successful might be something of a consolation that perhaps this case instituted in France might go the Nigerian way. But the advice one would give should be that the best legal minds in Nigeria should be contracted, and if possible internationally as well, because it's a French court, to try to make sure that the matter is resolved. It's quite embarrassing, that Nigeria will find itself in such a litigious circumstance. But let's hope that they can sort it out and the reputation of the country can be regained.
And one of the other items that came up there for a number of people is that it appears as though this Chinese company at least did some digging to the extent that jets that Nigerians some don't know that the government had acquired, they listed it as part of the property that should be acquired, should be seized from Nigeria to handed to this Chinese company. In that regard, were you surprised when that information came through? Because many thought, wait a minute, the government hadn't told us that they've acquired this jet, so where is this coming from? Did you hear that, Mr. Lowake?
No, Chamberlain, I lost you.
Okay,
you were saying something about the property of the Chinese company.
No, I'm talking about the way they might have done their digging. We don't know if they had information from their other agencies, Chinese companies or something here, because they even cited the certain jet owned by Nigeria, newly acquired jet, which several Nigerians are still wondering, wait a minute, did they acquire this jet and were not even publicly or officially told that they've acquired this jet? So when that information came through, how did you process it?
Yes, I was surprised because I saw the list of assets, which are mainly the presidential fleet. And I saw an Airbus. And I know that in our presidential fleet, we don't have an Airbus. We have a 727, we have a Gulfstream, we have a Falcon, but we've never operated an Airbus in the presidential fleet. So it points to the fact, I assume perhaps this is the new aircraft that the federal government is trying to acquire. But it's quite surprising that even that is part of what has been seized. So the question, of course, would be, have we fully paid and have we taken delivery of that aircraft for it now to be part of what has been seized? And how did they know that these aircraft were undergoing, the normal checks, not security, but now maintenance checks in France? So they had very good information. Which might point to some Nigerians as well colluding with them, and which is worrisome, and I think this is what the federal government will need to investigate.
Well, we've heard the response of the Attorney General, saying that those assets are sovereign assets and they're immune from any seizure by, will I say, another foreign entity, as the case might be. Can you speak a little more on what constitutes sovereign assets and perhaps any, let's say, guiding international relations principle around them?
Yeah, I think that's quite a good argument by the federal government. Now, but a couple of questions would arise, surrounding that. If we have an embassy, say in France, our embassy in France and all assets belonging to our embassy in France are sovereign assets, and they will be covered by the relevant provisions of the Vienna Convention, the Vienna Diplomatic Convention, and so on and so forth. Now, when an aircraft is flown into a country to undergo maintenance, I think perhaps we might need very good lawyers to show that these are sovereign assets. I'm not exactly clear, in given the circumstances in which those aircraft arrived in France. If, for instance, our president or any of our top official was visiting France, all the diplomatic immunities and privileges will accrue automatically, including, of course, the vessels by which they have accessed that particular country. But when these aircraft are sent for maintenance, I do not know the circumstances. Is it a vendor who took those aircraft to France? Was the maintenance contracted to that vendor? What were the circumstances by which that vendor moved the aircraft? And what are the procedures, and documentation that that vendor had followed in bringing those aircraft into France? So these are some of the questions that may have to determine, whether these are actually sovereign assets as at the time that they were seized. And one not being privy to such information, I think it will be difficult to advance arguments. I want to assume that the federal government, of course, has more information with regard to this, and therefore is making such a position.
What level of disclosure would you say that the federal government of Nigeria owes its citizens with regards to this particular matter?
That's a very good question. I would single out the issue of the Airbus, which is part of the aircraft allegedly seized now. Except I missed it, but I'm not aware that this has been disclosed as having been fully acquired and inducted into the presidential fleet. So is this aircraft still with the manufacturer? Because Airbus Industrie is a French company and the factory is in France. So is that aircraft still with the manufacturer, or has that aircraft actually been delivered officially to the Nigerian government? I think this would be some of the questions, but then the federal authorities, I believe, ought to have informed the country, because now we just learned that this is one of the aircraft seized. But again, I'm saying I may be wrong, but I have not seen previously any public information to the effect that that aircraft had actually been inducted and delivered to Nigeria. Perhaps it was done and it was not publicized, but this was not public knowledge. Again, on this, I stand to be corrected. Now, if this were the case, then I think there's a lesson to be learned going forward in how and when such information are made public, especially to clarify things to such unwarranted situations as we have found ourselves should occur again.
Well, my interest is in the visit of Mr. President to Malabo, and which conversation surrounded the signing of an agreement on gas pipeline for the Gulf of Guinea. Well, this is not the first of this series we are hearing, and quite a number have gone on. What would be your understanding of this? There are a number of people in Nigeria will probably say, is that what's next? What's your take on it? What's your understanding of this, and what hopes does it bring for Nigeria?
First of all, I think it's a very good initiative by the president. I think that right now the country is under a lot of pressure to generate additional foreign exchange. And I think that such an initiative as this gives us a vantage position from which to try to generate additional foreign exchange, especially in contexts where they do not have histories of pipeline vandalization and some of the indiscipline and misdemeanors that have plagued our own domestic economy. So the more we are able to invest in such offshore, environments, I think the better for our economy. So I commend the president and his team for this effort. Now, what I think the president needs to watch out for in order for this kind of initiative to actually live up to its billing is to look at our history. We do not have a history of executing or delivering such initiatives perfectly. And I'll cite one or two examples. We signed an agreement with Sao Tome and Principe in 2001 to set up a joint development zone, JDZ, in the Gulf of Guinea, in waters that are territorial to Sao Tome and Principe. And then we established the Nigeria-Sao Tome Joint Development Zone in the year 2002. It effectively took off. But as you and I speak or have this conversation, we do not have any information in the public domain as to how successful this initiative has been. We haven't seen the attainment of milestones. We haven't seen the outcome of those initiatives. And Nigeria, if I recall correctly, was supposed to finance the exploration of oil within the JDZ to, I think, a tune of between 60 or 70% for those allocated under the JDZ. So Mr. President should need to go back in history and ask to know exactly where we are with that project. Because if we are not moving forward with that project, what is there to suggest that we can move forward with this initiative that the president has initiated with Equatorial Guinea? Secondly, we have some countries in Africa that have delivered on similar enterprises successfully, and outside Libya under Colonel Gaddafi. Under Colonel Gaddafi, Libya acquired 7% of the Italian vehicle company known as Iveco. Libya acquired several assets in Uganda. Libya acquired most of the tourism assets, perhaps the blue chip tourism assets in Kenya. They were owned by the state of Libya. I don't know what the current situation with those assets are, but these are examples to show that even if Libya had stopped pumping oil, Libya was already getting to a stage where it was having substantial investments in many offshore assets that was sufficient enough to significantly drive its economy should anything happen to the oil industry. So when we went into the JDZ, it was a pointer to the fact that we are now beginning to do something good, just as the Libyans did. The second example I'll quickly cite is the West African gas pipeline. I'm sure you recall that not too long ago, Ghana, Togo, and a few countries began to suffer blackouts based on the inability of Nigeria to supply gas. So Mr. President needs to also investigate this, because when we have all of these offshore assets and we are not delivering effectively on them, there's a risk that this laudable initiative that the president has initiated with Equatorial Guinea may also go the same way. One good point I would like to add before I wrap up on this is that for many Nigerians who may not know, Nigeria and Equatorial Guinea are extremely close. In fact, in the 80s, and I say in the 80s because I'm not current, I don't know what the demographic reality is today, but in the 80s, the Nigerian population in Equatorial Guinea was more than the population of the citizens of Equatorial Guinea. And this dates back to the practice of the Spanish colonial power that created dysfunctions within the Equatorial Guinean society such that they could not have labor to work on the cocoa plantations. And they had to resort to hiring labor from Nigeria, specifically from Akwa Ibom and Cross River states. So, and I suspect the reality is probably still the same. We have more Nigerians in Equatorial Guinea than the population of Equatorial Guinea. So this initiative of Mr. President is not only something that could benefit the homeland Nigeria, but that also has potential benefit for our Nigerian citizens who are relatively the majority in Equatorial Guinea. So for this and other reasons, I think the president needs to make sure that this works. Maybe by setting up a special purpose vehicle, because I feel that all these initiatives that we do offshore do not have any special purpose vehicle to drive them. They are either being run partly by Ministry of Foreign Affairs, partly by the presidency, partly by the NNPC, partly by Ministry of Petroleum or whatever. But I think we need to come to a stage now where there should be a special purpose vehicle, and I dare say something perhaps in the mold of a Nigerian Agency for International Development. And this Nigerian Agency for International Development should warehouse all of these projects that can enhance the soft power of Nigeria in the international domain and ensure that we can run them successfully and their objectives can be met for the benefit of our citizens.
Well, just one more thing, and this has to do with security. You know, the president, who happens to be the chairman of ECOWAS, who was reappointed, he is speaking about a standby force, at least for the sub-region, such that we'll be able to address terrorism. He spoke of a similar scenario when he attended the AU summit. But at what point, how do you see this playing out, for instance? I mean, when you talk about ECOWAS, even ECOWAS countries, you know the role Nigeria has got to play. So if he's trying to rally the troops, is it a right strategy, a right time? Do you see this even happening? Can we afford it at this point in time?
Good question, Chamberlain. I respectfully would like to suggest that we avail ourselves of the resources available in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I don't know if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is part of those who wrote that speech for the president. We have an ECOWAS standby force already. We have a multinational joint task force comprising of the Lake Chad countries, Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, battling Boko Haram and ISWAP. So in my own opinion, maybe the president has something else in mind, but in my own opinion, we need to just rely on the ECOWAS standby force, which already exists. I really don't think we need any new force to combat terrorism, because part of the remit of the ECOWAS standby force is also to fight terrorism. And we have examples. We deployed troops to Mali under AFISMA at the beginning of the operations to fight against the Tuaregs who were threatening the government of Captain Sanogo, And we have deployed troops around, either as part of ECOWAS or bilaterally, or as part of the multinational joint task force. Unless if what the president is hinting at is something specific to terrorism alone. But then they probably have some information maybe not available to us. But in my humble opinion, I would rather say that Mr. President could actually look at making the ECOWAS standby force to be fit for purpose regarding this idea that he's pushing, or to see how they can retweak the multinational joint task force. I think this would be better than trying to set up something new that would require a different infrastructure at a time they were struggling to get our economy going.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Bayo Oloake.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's take a look at some messages that's come through from you. Quite a number. Austin Obe, I see yours. You say, quote, I got rejected some years back from Unijos due to catchment area and ELDS, that's educationally less developed states, despite the fact that I was number 7 on overall JAMB. He goes on to say, had to move to my second choice. More qualified students suffer this fate. ELDS should only apply to states, universities, and not federal universities.
Well, sorry about that, even though I don't know what ELD, I believe that's catchment area. But take a look at what Festus Akimboyewa is writing now. He says, it's sad that our governors prefer to go about in large convoys of very expensive vehicles and buying expensive cars for members of their state assemblies and judges, while millions of children in their state are learning in dilapidated buildings. As part of the review of our educational sector, government must improve the quality of schools in Nigeria, provide educational resources to teachers, and build their capacity to use modern methods of teaching. It is urgent, he says.
This one is from Imonocha, says, Nigeria hopes for the future. Nigeria's hope for the future is creating the basic educational infrastructure, especially primary and post-primary education. Federal and state governments must review their budgetary allocation, recruit qualified teachers, improve a lame curriculum, and bring back vocational institutions.
All right, so there you go. That wraps it up today on the program. We do thank you all for watching. We will see you next time. Until then, have yourselves a very lovely Friday, because I know some people who will. I'm Chamberlain myself. Goodbye.
And don't forget to watch Hard Copy tonight. I'm Maupe. Okay, yourself.
Well, the sun will see rise tomorrow. See you then. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.